Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing another sort of like a top 10 list today. I believe that this video was requested a good couple of months ago now, basically to go over 10 solo records by people formerly in bands. So yeah, that's just what I will do today. So I've got I wanted to sort of make the list a little bit diverse, so there's only gonna be one album per artist, because if I was really actually doing my definitive list of favorite solo records from former band members, then the list would probably have about 3 Paul Weller records in it, a similar number for McCartney and that. So yeah, I wanted to sort of limit it to one album per artist. And also as well, this is just in a bit of a slightly random order, really. It's not a strict top 10 this here. So if I put an album say at number 9, what you think should be higher, that's fair enough. This isn't an actual firm list, it is all subject to change. So yes, I will just get started with my number 10 choice, which is this album here by Peter Gabriel, of course former member of Genesis. This is his third solo record, third self-titled record, but it is commonly referred to as Melt. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Genesis. I like some of their albums more than others. I'm not a huge fan of theirs, but I do quite like Peter Gabriel's solo work, and this is my favourite album of his, of what I've heard so far. It's 1980 this one came out, so it's got a kind of sort of new wave rock sort of feel to it, quite similar to what Bowie was doing at the time, and similar to a lot of new wave music Talking Heads, that sort of stuff. You've got some brilliant tracks on here, such as And Through the Wire, which is my favourite song on this album. Cracking track there. Hit single Games Without Frontiers is on this album, as well as Biko. So yeah, a great album here from former Genesis member Peter Gabriel. Number 9 comes from this artist here, former member of the Smiths, Johnny Marr. Now for most people, Morrissey was the Smiths. Morrissey and the Smiths, some people are interchangeable. Morrissey was the Smiths. However, Johnny Marr was just as important. He wrote all the music. He was playing all the guitars, really deeply involved with the making of those records. And for me, Morrissey's solo work suffers a little bit because Marr wasn't involved. But Marr does have some great solo records. He's only got 2 actual solo albums. He mostly collaborated with other musicians after the Smiths broke up. So this was his first actual solo record, and it is fantastic. Lots of great tracks in here, such as Upstarts, Lockdown, The Messenger itself is great, The Crack Up, and my personal favourite, New Time Velocity, it's just fantastic. The guitar sound of that, just so smooth, such a pleasant track to listen to. So yeah, Johnny Marr certainly deserves a lot more attention. So yeah, if into sort of indie rock, so Oasis, that kind of thing, I'm sure that you will really like this album. Give it a go, Johnny Marr, Messenger. Now for the band who are technically still going, they have been through many lineup changes throughout their 50-year career, and also the different members at some point made solo records, made solo records. I'm talking about The Who, and more importantly this album from Pete Townsend called Empty Glass. So yeah, The Who, they weren't the most productive band overall, because again, say the 70s and that, you'd have an album, then a 3-year wait, and then a Who album, and in those gaps they would be usually making solo records, and this was one of Pete Townsend's from 1980, and this is a really solid album. I think this is possibly better than like the Who's albums like off the time, and Face Dances and It's Hard. So yeah, like I chose this one. Like I could have like also like picked like one of like Roger Daltrey's solo albums, such as his first album, like, is like very good, but like I thought like I could go for this one here, like Pete Townsend, like as like a solo artist, like he doesn't like get like as much attention, and like I think like it is like a solid album here, Empty Glass from 1980. Another band, like in like a similar position like to like the Who, like they had like quite like a long like career and like went through various like lineup changes, Pink Floyd, and like like, and like the most sort of like obvious one to go for like would probably be like Roger Waters. Like he made like a lot of solo records, but I am choosing David Gilmour. Like he also like made like quite a few solo albums. This is his first solo record from 1978, so very much like the peak like of like Pink Floyd, but like this was just as like Roger Waters like was taking things over, like sort of like with like the Animals album and like The Wall, and like this was where Pink Floyd was starting like to go downhill like a little bit, and so like understand like why Gilmour like wanted to make a solo album like at this point in time. And it's also very good as well. Like I mean, like it's no Dark Side of the Moon like or like Wish You Were Here like by any stretch of the imagination, but like what is, I guess, like a solid like rocking album here. So yeah, like David Gilmour, like quite like underrated solo wise. I mean, like I'm not the biggest fan like of like his recent album called Rattle That Lock. Like I was only sort of like lukewarm like on that album, but like this one here, like I don't hear like much talked about it, like, and like I really like enjoy it. So yeah, that's David Gilmour's self-titled solo debut from 1978. Don't feel so this list like wouldn't be complete without a couple of solo Beatles albums. So like the first one like I have selected like for me is John Lennon's finest album, Plastic Ono Band here from 1970, which is just a incredible album, like in terms of like the emotion, like what he put into it, that the actual production like as well like is like very intense, like very raw, but like for like the most part like there's only like 3 musicians like playing like on like the album. Like you've got Lennon like on like piano like or guitar, Ringo drums, and Klaus Voormann like on bass. So yeah, like a real sort of like tight-knit band like playing like really well. Like the songs in here are like just incredible, like stuff like Mother and Remember and God. So yeah, like a lot of fantastic like songs like on this album. Like on this album, like it's not a record that which like you can play like whatever mood like, you know, like you really like need to want to hear this album like to be able like to like appreciate it, but like when like you are like in that mood, like it is just fantastic stuff like from John Lennon 1970 Plastic Ono Band. If you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long lost pal. Okay, so now Simon and Garfunkel, like after they split up like in that 1970, like both of them like went off to do like solo careers, like with like varying like degrees like of like success. Like Paul Simon like made some very good records. Art Garfunkel, like the same like can't be said like about him, like unfortunately. So yeah, like I'm talking about like a Paul Simon record, and like for me like his finest solo work like is Graceland here. Like I know that it is like the obvious choice to go for, but it is just an incredible record, like and like a incredible like comeback like for Paul Simon, like who like in like say like 1985 like his career like was like on the rocks, like he wasn't selling records anymore, but this just like completely like revitalized him, like introduced him like to like a brand new audience like at the time. So yeah, Graceland, incredible album here. Like you've got like The Boy in the Bubble, You Can Call Me Al, like Under African Skies, Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes. Yeah, just incredible songs like after incredible song, very unique sound like on this album as well. So yeah, like an 80s classic here, Paul Simon's Graceland. So lift me up, finish what you started. And now for a really underrated record, like one of only 2 solo albums by this artist, it is Jeff Lynne and his album Armchair Theatre. Now, like ELO, like I had a kind of like strange like history. Like they kind of like they formally like broke up like in like 1986. Like whoever like the ELO name like was used like on like the Zoom album and like also the latest one, Alone in the Universe. Like kind of basically like just because Jeff Lynne like could like use like the name and like ELO like the name like it sells like records like at the end of the day. So this was like only one of 2 solo records like what he's put out thus far, and I think this is incredible. Like a really great like underrated album. Like nice balance like of like rockers like on here. Like you've got like slower tracks like as well, like more sort of like ballads like more sort of like ballads, like a couple like of like old standards. So yeah, like a great album. Like certainly like if like you're like a fan of like Tom Petty's Film and Fever or like George Harrison's Cloud 9, you will really like this album because it was made like right in like the middle like of like the Travelling Wilburys like years. So yeah, like it's got a very similar sound to those 2 albums. So yeah, Jeff Lynne's Armchair Theatre, a fantastic record, certainly worth checking out. Another frankly brilliant album now, number 3 on my list of solo albums by former band members. This one would have come as like a massive surprise again, like 1970, like after the like after the Beatles broke up, like everyone like expecting like Paul and John to make like pretty good like solo records. Like however like George, like I don't think that there was probably much like expectation like for him like to make like a really good like solo record. However, that is exactly what he done on All Things Must Pass here, which is just a fantastic like amazing album. Like technically like a triple album, like really like only like a double album like as far like as like actual songs go. Like however like the actual double album itself like is almost like flawless like in terms of like song quality, and like so many great tracks like What Is Life, My Sweet Lord, Beware of Darkness, the title song itself, just great. Like the only thing what I would change about this album like is the production. Like I think like it really like should get like a remix this album, like in like the same vein like in the same vein that Sgt. Pepper like got like completely like remixed, like kind of like to like remove like a lot of like Phil Spector's like excess production like on here, like kind of strip it back, like because you would still have like the original album like to go back to, but like I think like sort of like a like alternate All Things Must Pass like would be really great like to have like available as well. So yeah, fantastic album here, like just like kind of like the songs like which George like was like collecting like towards the end like of like the Beatles days. So yeah, brilliant album here. Like George Harrison, All Things Must Pass, definitely up there like in like the best like solo Beatles records. And now at number 2, I've got this album here from former Oasis member Noel Gallagher. Like you might call this one cheating because it is technically like under the name of Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. Like however, that is really just like a vehicle like for Noel Gallagher's like solo career. Like it's basically just like Noel like and like a lot of like backing musicians like really like on like that like significant like really like I mean, but this album is really great. I think that it is as good as Oasis like at like their like peak, like What's the Story, Morning Glory, definitely maybe. This album like for me like is as good as those. No, like he's like maturing like as far like as like his like songwriting goes, like using a lot more different sounds, and that like on this record like some sort of like jazzier like influences, like some sort of dance stuff as well, like some more bluesy stuff. Like I mean, like it is like a really great balanced album here. So yeah, like you might like not like the guy, like you might not like stand like his like personality, but you can't deny that like he makes some great music, and like this record like is certainly like worth checking out from 2014. That is Noel Gallagher's Chasing Yesterday. And now probably my favourite like solo artist, like possibly like I mean like as far like as like his career, like it was a pretty like flawless like career like overall. Like maybe like he had like a bit of like a dip like in like the early 2000s, like however like he's certainly like picked it up like now, and like it's Paul Weller, and like basically like I've chosen like Stanley Rhodes like to best like represent like what like Paul Weller like the mod father like was all about. I just think you've got like a like incredible variety like on this album, like of like real sort of like like rockers, like some more like kind of like slower, like slightly more sort of bruising, like bluesier pieces, like soulful stuff, like ballads. So yeah, great mix like on this album here. So yeah, Paul Weller, like just a fantastic solo artist. Like of course, like former member like of the Jam and that Style Can. So like whoever, this album here like is best-selling record like off like his like whole career, and like I can really see why, because it is just like off like incredible quality throughout. Okay, so guys, I hope you have enjoyed this little top 10 video. Like of course I would be interested to know what like some of like your favorite like solo records are by like former band members, and like also like just like another like pointer, like I mean like this like wasn't like a this wasn't a like extorsive list. I mean I didn't like even talk about Paul McCartney like in like this video, like so yeah, like there are like other albums like which like I could have picked. Like these were like the 10 though, like which I was just like in like the mood to talk about today though. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.